to make it better. I'm a roller coaster. And may Suzanne Summers rest in peace. And I am so grateful for the content that her family continues to post on her Instagram account, which I have been loyally following for years. I love Suzanne Summers. I love Alan. I love their whole family. Legend. Do you know that woman? She set records on QVC or Home Shopping Network in seconds. She would sell out. People have no idea how hard that woman worked and how much she did and how successful she was and how she knew how to sell, from the Thigh Master to television to best-selling multiple books. She was always with the times. Then she got on Instagram Live. She and Alan were doing their cocktail hours. I was signing on every day during COVID, okay? I was signing on and watching them drink these cocktails in their home. A blessing.
A blessing.
Look right into your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather, talking trends and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather, relentless focus on their bodies. Sweet feather, sweet feather, what do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather, no sex, just titillation.
So today we're reading Sweet
you,
Valley High number 33, starting over. All right, we got 6-word reviews
Okay.
for this godforsaken book. This book, starting over. Do you have one?
I do. It's 7 words, and it's kind of pardo-y in its turn.
Cadence
in its turn is what I'm hoping for. It may not work.
Ooh.
I'm no pardo.
Turn. No, well, you should just be yourself, Robert. You know, it's the only person you could be is yourself, and we can't be another. Unless we're Jess or Liz and we make everyone get fooled. Oh my God, remind me to tell you about one of my many favorite Sweet Valley Twins books is called April Fools, and I gotta tell you about what happens in its life. Another one is called It Can't Happen Here, which is a Holocaust allegory. One of my favorite Sweet Valley Twins memories, and Davina, if you're listening, shout out to you. We were at a bookstore, and I was like looking at the Sweet Valley Twins books that were on a display, thinking like, which one do I want to get? And Davina, I was with my older sister, Davina, and she was looking at them with me. And she passed me one called It Can't Happen Here. She's like, you should get this one. And I like, what's this? It can't happen here. And on the front, it's like a bunch of kids like looking like, I don't know, tense or I don't know what. Then on the back, it's like, well, the new teacher at school has a project for the kids. And what is it? But they're split up into 2. And one are the jailers and one are the prisoners or whatever. And what happens? Things go a very strange way. And everyone learns a lesson. And I'm like, huh? I literally was like, what is this? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't get it. This is weird. Like, what? Like, what can't happen where? Like, who? And I told Davina, like, I don't get it. Like, what is this? And she goes, just read it. And I did buy it, and I did read it, and then I understood. Everyone out there should read that book. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Rescue dogs and rescue kids, the same?
Okay. It's 7. No one should take advice from Dana Larson. It's 8.
Okay.
No one should take advice from Dana Larson. She gives very bad advice. There's a line in the book where she goes to this girl, okay, her cousin who's been in foster care all her life and just moved in with them. She goes to her, you gotta pretend your old life just never happened. I'm just like, yeah.
That's very Sweet Valley.
It
It's
prickles. It
so
prickles at this. Yeah, I know. Dana, it's just it's a lot of this with Dana. Whew.
Dana is a product of her environment and her time, and the novel in which she appears, though, very much that is the exact same thing that so many people have tried to say over and over and over again about your Trisha Martins, about your being abducted, about
I
there's a
know.
very don't look back vibe to these texts.
Back, front, side to side. Just don't look. Just be wearing a blindfold. Always, 24/7.
Like so much of a hostage.
That being said,
Yeah.
Dana Larson does also have the best line of the book. Don't you think malls are wild? They're like the new Main Street USA, know what I mean? As she chews a soft pretzel in the mall.
I highlighted that and wrote, I cannot wait for Parta to talk about this.
It's so good.
It's so good.
They're like the new Main Street USA. Know what I mean? And Sally's like,
And yes, I do know what you mean. You want to cliff me?
yeah, let's do the cliffhanger from the previous book. Do you have it?
Okay, so the cliffhanger, we have Sally Larson, who is Dana and Jeremy Larson's cousin, coming to town. And what we know at that point is that Sally is a foster child who has been bounced from home to home, and she is coming to stay with Dana and Jeremy. Well, I guess that's everything, Sally Larson said ruefully, looking around the tiny bedroom she had been sharing with her foster sister. She couldn't pretend she was sad about leaving this house. At some of the homes she had lived in, it had been hard saying goodbye. But not this time. She just wished she knew her cousins and her aunt and uncle a little better. It was hard enough leaving a difficult foster family situation. But Sally knew this was the end of the road. If the Larsons didn't want her. But she couldn't think that way, she reminded herself. She had to be positive. This was the day she'd been looking forward to for so long. The day she'd been preparing and planning for. It was finally here. She was moving in with family. Real family. She had to think positively. Because she knew if this move didn't work out, there was no place else for her to go. Will Sally find a real home in Sweet Valley? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 33, starting over.
Okay, plot summary.
Do
Okay,
you...
I'll take A.
No, I can take. Do you want?
No, you can
sure?
have the riches. You can have the riches.
I'm not wearing my jewel tone today, so it makes sense that I would kind of hoard whatever jewels I could take.
As Robert just told us, Sally Larson's coming. And we understand that she's their cousin. It's the mom's sister's daughter, but they seem to have never met her, or because the mom introduced, when she shows up, the mom's like, hi, I'm Aunt whoever. So it's the mom's sister who's from San Francisco, and this girl has been in various foster homes ever since her parents abandoned her. And it's there's so many questions about what happened to parents, because we're told that the father was a quote unquote bum/alcoholic and abandoned her when they were younger. And then all it says is that the mom remarried and then also abandoned her. I don't know. The dad, at least we learn he's an alcoholic. There's at least some suggestion of what, but I'm it's written as if the mom remarrying and then abandoning her is has to do with each other. But I'm why? I don't know. I was just tell me more. What the hell happened here? Anyhow, so whatever. Sally's coming to stay with them. And yeah, it's Dana and Jeremy has an attitude and is totally hostile, presenting this pretty much till the last page. Dana goes through a journey where at first she's trying to be chipper and excited, and Sally is welcoming this initially because she's feeling very, very much her presence is so precarious, and oh gosh, I've been kicked out of so many homes, and this is a chance to have a real family in Sweet Valley, a nice place. Please let me stay here. This is my quote unquote last chance. And it's unclear, basically she'll be on the streets, it sounds like, if she gets kicked out of Sweet Valley. And it was also told to us that she has spent time on the streets in addition to in foster homes. So she's very much trying to be pleasing everyone. So Dana at first is into her, but we see very quickly that Dana has a lot of shame and embarrassment around Sally's story, the fact that she has like had to do a year in high school over again, and she's telling her like, don't tell anyone like about your past and stuff, and like lie about how old you are, and she pushes this whole makeover on her and like wants her to have all her interests, kind of similar to like when Amy moved back in Bitter Rivals and Liz was like, come work at the Oracle, but in a more controlling and like gross way. It's a combination of Dana's being sort of controlling, but also Sally's being passive because she is so worried about not pleasing them that she isn't being honest about, I don't actually want to be the manager for your band that I don't care about. I actually want to go work at the Oracle. So Dana's doing this big favor to her by getting her like whatever. So it's a lot of that. But then after Dana's mom says like, well, you can actually learn something from her because she keeps her room tidy and you need to keep your room tidy. Suddenly there's like a switch. And then it goes on this journey of, well, before she liked how much of a sycophant Sally Larson was being, but now she starts to resent it. And then so by the end, she's like just as pissed at her basically as Jeremy is. And then we end with a kooky climax of a very familiar nature with a couple twists. I don't. Instead of being like a medical emergency, it's like a threat of sexual violence emergency at Kelly's. And Dana and Jeremy do something deplorable. And I've not forgiven them for what they did in this book. I find it one of the most deplorable things we've seen in this book from characters that are supposedly our friends. So I'd put this at the level of really, really bad what they did. Like I was astounded. Then at the end, but then like because that threat of sexual violence emergency happens and Sally basically like sacrifices herself to be God knows whated by these like creeps, then suddenly Dana and Jeremy like her again. And when they save her, they're like on their way home because the Larson said they're having a family meeting and they all think that it means that they're kicking Sally out, but it actually means that they decide to adopt her. And in the end, they're happy.
To
Sorry,
give
that
just
was
like,
long.
no, it was great. I wanted more. To give like around the deplorability of it, just very, very quickly. So basically,
Oh, I was
Sa-
I was intentionally leaving it.
oh, were you? You are
I
a
mean, why
mistress
not?
of the
We
slow reveal.
we gotta keep them. I mean, most of these people haven't read this. I mean,
True.
we gotta keep them wondering.
I'm wondering
No?
myself. I'm
I mean, I don't
tantalized.
know if you want to, if you think we
No,
need
no,
to
no, no,
explain it
no.
now, but I think it's
No.
not, yeah.
I like the kind of cliffhanger within a cliffhanger that you're giving. The B plot has resonances with the A plot. So Jessica adopts a dog. And in like kind of a chemistry plot, really, really weirdness kind of situation, the Wakefield parents are out of town for the weekend. Jessica comes home with a golden retriever, golden Labrador, golden lab. Like a little, they take pains to talk about how chubby this little puppy bear is. He's a chubby little puppy bear. And so Jessica brings this dog home. Elizabeth is lizzing everywhere and is like, you can't do this. You can't do this. Oh, but he is very cute. Oh, but he is very sweet. And they decide that they are going to secretly keep the dog in the home for the week. And if they can secretly keep the dog in the home for the week with no problems, they're then going to reveal the dog to their parents, who will then be like, oh, we didn't even know there was a dog, but I guess you can get a dog. On one of the last days when they're keeping the dog in the house, they take the dog on a walk. The dog slips out of its collar and runs away. They try to find the dog, but they can't. And they basically give up on finding the dog. And then in a gift of the Magi style reveal at the end, Mr. Wakefield comes home and it says, I've got a surprise for you girls. I may be the devil, but you were talking about wanting to get a dog and I got you a dog. And he brings in the same dog that he found at the animal rescue shelter that they had lost the day before. So all is happy. And I'm hoping that this is a recurring character. And the dog's name, listener, Prince Albert, which is both very, very cute because it's like a very regal name for a dog. And it also invokes kind of a sexuality and a phallus piercing that I think really works nicely.
Yeah, I never knew that Prince Albert was actually a penis piercing until like recently in life when I was like telling someone like, oh, like in Sweet Valley High, like the girls had a dog, his name was Prince Albert, and like it was so cute. And they were like, "Oh, do you know what that means?" I was like, "No." But yeah, Prince Albert, I'm so proud of myself for not at all spoiling because them getting a dog, Prince Albert, is like such a huge deal. It's basically a new family member.
Yeah.
And like, yes, Prince Albert continues, and
Oh,
like
thank God.
Prince Albert is the family dog, and I'm so happy he's here. He's so cute. He's so sweet.
Obviously, he's blonde, so they can fit in with the family.
There's a lot of, goofiness, but it's funny that like this whole thing supposedly hinges on the fact that like, well, Jessica's room is so messy anyway that like if we just throw some, covers on him or like some clothes on him, like no one's gonna notice. And like he basically doesn't bark or make any noises. There's one dinner that he like does a howl and the parents are like, "What's that?" And Jessica's like, I guess it's one of these heavy metal songs on my radio I forgot to turn off." And like I'm like, what? Like a puppy would have been like squealing the whole time, but that's another story. So
Well, I think it hinges on two things. One, it hinges on Jessica's messy room. The other thing it hinges on, which we've come to know and despise, is the dereliction of duty of the Wakefield parents and the fact that the Wakefield parents are so disengaged and uninvolved in the lives of the home and their children. They're like, they can have a full-on puppy at the house and they don't even notice.
100%. Also, it should be noted that like the reason they're out of town is because they're at a resort for a vacation. I just want to say like they are kind of on vacation a lot, even though they frame it as that they never are on vacation. They like kind of are. Like
Is that Prince Albert?
Princess Albertina.
I was just thinking Princess Albertina, which is good because Tina. That's very clever. Do you want to wait for the like kind of faux parallels that I created between the A plot and the B plot for when they come up naturally, or do you want me to kind of expound on them now?
Feel free to expound.
So the thing that I think the kind of overlap is the story is like we take in someone, they make our lives inconvenient, we either on purpose or kind of accidentally release them back to the streets, they come back, we include them in our family. It's not a perfect one-to-one parallel, but I do think it's interesting that like Prince Albert's big escape, life on the streets, Sally's kind of time at Kelly's, and am I giving away too much of that? And like her, like kind of her being abandoned.
Yeah, what's the lesson? What's the meaning? And I don't have the answer. I'm trying to figure it out. Like I do think it's interesting that there is this parallel story, and I do think that's meaningful. And I'm trying to figure out like what can we take from it? Like what does this show us?
I was thinking the message is, when a family grows, it takes adjustment and there are some uncomfortable periods. But if we can remind ourselves that as a family grows, we're all still a family, it can end happily with kisses on the nose and a waggy tail.
But why do they have to have the thing before the end where it's like they come, they go, and they come back? Is that telling us that there has to be a break in order for there to be an integration? There has to be a resistance or a conflict to prove that it can be solid or something?
Maybe. I was also just wondering if some of the more reluctant family members need to realize how bad it would be for the other person if they weren't taken in, like if the person or dog, like it's like a realization moment for Dana and less so for the twins, but whatever.
So so hopefully the twins next time are going to tighten that collar a little bit so it can't slip over the dog's head.
Or maybe get the dog a harness.
Yeah, that's right. Or a gentle leader, a halty. And Dana and Jeremy can get a halty for Sally. I mean, there is a scene of someone putting a collar on a neck in this book, a collar on a human neck, a dog collar. And I think, that also draws our attention to these parallels. Sally, they could just put her on a leash.
I mean, at least while she's still learning the neighborhood and figuring things out, I think that does make sense. Also, remember that a mall is Main Street, USA. Of course, where should children always be leashed?
At the mall.
At the mall.
Yeah, or at least have a remote electric collar, kind of.
Is that if they go too far or if they talk or both?
It depends on the rules of the home. Okay.
That's so true. We wouldn't want to project our rules on anyone else.
Would you
want to show me a cover?
Yeah, please guess the taglines first.
Will Sally fit in Sweet Valley? Will Sally find a new home in Sweet Valley?
Close, sort of.
can Sally break away from her dark past to find a new bright light in Sweet Valley? Your
No.
silence speaks volumes.
No. Will Sally Larson have to change to stay in Sweet Valley?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, back.
Woof, woof, woof. Dot, dot, dot.
Mm-mm.
A well-timed makeover. Dot, dot, dot.
Mm-mm.
A fun day at the mall. Dot, dot, dot.
These aren't real guesses. You're being funny, which I do like, but stop being funny.
Sorry. That was disrespectful to the art.
The last chance, dot, dot, dot.
Oh.
Like, whatever. Okay.
One thing I will say, like or hate this book, I do think it captures a lot of the emotions of a young girl going through foster care. And I think it points out the like glaring holes in the American safety net system and the idea that, I mean, aging out of foster care at 18 is unbelievable and inhumane. And the idea that this is like kind of Sally's last chance, dot, 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 is true for lots of foster care children who are aging out of the system. And I think is represented here in terms of her kind of the stakes of this and her fear and stuff.
I like this. I like also I think it's very well done. The psychology of Sally and like some of the dynamics of her and Dana, I think are pretty, as you would say, well observed. And like feel very real to me. It's just the end is really fucking stupid and annoying and irritating. And I wish it could have been another way, but we'll get to it.
I feel
All
like
right,
the end of the A plot and the end of the B plot share a
Yes.
similar like blech.
Yeah,
But at least the B plot has a dog.
exactly.
You got a cover for me? Sorry, that's just really, really, really funny. So this can't be our first cover with no twins on it, right? I'm sure it's not.
Oh my God, Robert, it's like a fifth or something. It's like we've
Okay,
had already
fine.
several.
Well, still, I
Probably
miss
more
the
than-
twins.
Wait, yeah, well,
So we've got Dana Larson wearing like kind of an orange, or is it pink?
it's very orange.
Yeah, a kind of hideous orange, like almost a members only jacket with a black scarf, or is that the collar of the jacket?
It could be part of a shirt. Like it could be a cowl neck shirt, then it would be our third cowl.
Mm,
But I
count
think
those
I assumed it
cowls.
was a scarf.
Okay, I also assumed it was scarf, but hashtag count the cowls. She is wearing a full face of what can only be described as 80s makeup, like light blue eyeshadow, bright pink cheeks, bright pink lips, dangly earrings, 2 bracelets, a short blonde kind of new wave haircut. And Sally Larson is sitting in front of her because Dana is kind of combing her hair in so much of a makeover montage. And Sally has kind of brown, unruly hair. She has a pretty face. She's looking into the mirror. And she's wearing kind of a blue button. And I wonder if, I can't say this for certain, but my thought process at the way that she is looking in the mirror, to me, feels like she is more looking at Dana's appearance and how Dana is judging how the makeover is going and whether things are going okay, than looking at herself. Do you get that vibe? Just the way that her eyes are kind of cut towards the mirror. Like if you chase the angle of reflection, I feel like the mirror is trained on Dana's face, not Sally's face.
And we must chase the angle of reflection.
I mean, who are we if we're not tracing angles of reflection?
When I look at it, like I see her eyes looking down at the mirror. I think the mirror could be showing either her or Dana or both of them, maybe. So I think it could be.
Okay.
If she is looking at her reflection, I think she's concerned. I mean,
Yeah.
or she's like, she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is her like passively receiving this makeover and Dana's smiling.
I think it must be said, Dana looks 45.
She looks like a professional hairdresser.
Yeah. She looks kind of like, shout out Linda Fay, the woman who cut my hair growing up.
Sally's holding the mirror it's like she doesn't want to be holding it. Like her
Mhm.
fingers are not, some of her fingers aren't touching it, and it almost looks like she's resisting holding the mirror in a way. Like she's not comfortably gripping it.
Yeah. Is that
Um,
the precarity of her situation, or what are you getting from that?
I think it's her ambivalence about her own reflection and what Dana's doing to
Mm.
her and her own like submission to Dana's controlling ways.
I love that.
May I posit an observation? Something that kept occurring to me when I was reading this book, and that I'm now like doubly seeing when I look at the cover. It's so clear in this book that Sally feels like she has to perform and like be a certain kind of good or whatever,
Mhm.
and like provide a certain kind of value in the household, like in order to be accepted and in order that the family's like going to keep her. And so she's like very polite and everything, which is great, but she then also like is like doing too many chores and kind of like sacrificing herself, which the parents observe, and they tell the Dana and Jeremy, you guys shouldn't take advantage of her kindness, and like you should encourage her to use the car because like she always says she doesn't want to, whatever, stuff like that. She feels that their love is conditional. And that's such a hurtful thing to see, because it's like no kid should feel that way, right?
Mm.
And like what it honestly reminded me of was Suzanne Devlin when she first, yeah, when she first came to the Wakefield, and she was constantly making breakfast and helping Stephen with his boat. And of course, we talked about it being manipulative and everything, but then there was also the reading that, like, we know she experienced neglect. I diagnosed her as a sociopath. And I think
Famously.
it's really interesting to look at these two. And if we look at the cover, there's a parallel to the cover of Too Good to Be True. Suzanne Devlin was also looking in a mirror with Elizabeth next to her, looking, as you would say, askance. And Suzanne was also wearing a powder blue top, and she was looking at a handheld mirror at her own reflection. And I think it's really interesting to look at, if you take two kids that have experienced some degree of neglect or abuse, right? It could go either way. Like,
Mm.
they both want and need the same things, which is to just have unconditional love. But like for some reason, Sally doesn't, like, Sally's experienced all kinds of hardships, right? But she doesn't treat the people around her, it seems, with aggression or cruelty. She's like nice, but like Suzanne wants the same things as her, and she's kind of sociopath. They're sort of like two sides of one coin. We could read this as for good, for true, and like she's another version of Suzanne.
I I love I love that. One thing I'm wondering, and I was wondering as you kind of presented that really, really beautiful braiding together of these two characters who on their surface seem very different. I wonder if part of it is that Sally knows she needs love and feels kind of the uncertainty of that. Whereas I think Suzanne, at least in One Good, One True, does not yet realize that what is missing from her life is love. And so I wonder if part of what's happening is like you need some driving force trauma. You need like either the horrors of the foster care system and being unhoused, or you need like a scary medical diagnosis to kind of make you understand that what's missing from your life is love.
Hmm. Shall we?
I would love to.
As is our custom, we start with the first paragraph of the book.
But it's kind of the engine. Dana, I said let's take it from the beginning again, okay? We're doing Meltdown. Dana Larson was startled out of her thoughts. Guy Chesney, the keyboard player for the Droids, Sweet Valley High's most popular band, was looking at her impatiently, waiting for her to snap out of her reverie. Hey, sorry, you guys, the Droid's lead singer said with a self-mocking smile. I guess I was in outer space for a minute there, she added, looking around at the familiar faces in the basement of lead guitarist Max Dillon's house. Yeah, well, come on back to Sweet Valley, okay? That's where we're practicing, at least for this Friday afternoon. Dana smiled weakly. She had been far away. She was thinking about her cousin, Sally Larson, who was arriving that night to live with Dana's family for a while. Dana hadn't seen Sally since they were very small. Back then, Dana had envied Sally. After all, she was a year older than Dana, and it seemed to make a big difference. But she didn't envy Sally anymore. Lots to do there.
I mean, Meltdown.
They give it
For
to
itself,
you.
I think. My first thought with this beginning was like, oh, she's being Liz. And isn't it interesting some of the parallels between Dana and Liz of the dissociation and stuff?
I was also the kind of lost in a daydream for an old friend slash family member coming back into town was very like Liz and Amy Sutton. And it set me up very early on to be like, oh, this is going to be another situation in which we're hopeful and things turn out a little differently than we hope.
Oh, I read it as anxiety. Because when Liz is dissociating, there's an anxiety piece, I think. Same thing with when Todd was coming back on Christmas.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also think though I purposefully ended it, she didn't envy Sally anymore. Because there's this tension in the text around when she is kind of threatened by Sally, when she isn't threatened by Sally, how she likes to think about Sally versus the reality of Sally. And so it seems like she feels comfortable or most comfortable thinking about Sally as this like poor little girl that we have to pity and we can't envy. And some of the tension later in the text comes up when it's like, oh wait, is she kind of envious of, if not Sally, at least the way that Dana's parents treat Sally or think of Sally?
Yeah, it's like the only way she seems to be able, for the bulk of the book, to be comfortable with Sally is to have her in this position where she feels that she's like being a role model to her and that she's like her main friend and that Sally is so looking up to her and wanting to be like her. And Dana has this like control. There's a moment where Sally is aware of this and she like thinks to herself, Dana seems to like it when I ask her for advice. So let me go ask her for advice on fashion, even though I don't actually care what she thinks. Like, I don't like any of this stuff. Dana's inner monologue. The only problem was that Sally's situation was embarrassing. A father who was a bum, no real home, a year behind in school. Sure, it wasn't Sally's fault, but ... Another pregnant ...
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Dana would say if she were prompted to finish that sentence? It wasn't Sally's fault, but
that doesn't make it more acceptable, or like, but that doesn't make her situation okay, or that doesn't make it less of an embarrassment. What were you thinking?
I'm not sure exactly, but I almost think there's something like that's interesting. Like, yeah, it's that, but it's for me also maybe like it's not her fault, but she's still contaminated by it kind of thing. Like it sticks to her.
It feels very believable for like a 16-year-old's thought process as well. Like, you shouldn't think differently and bad about this girl, but you still do.
Or older than a 16-year-old. I mean, this is just social stigma. This is everywhere in life.
The idea of contamination, I think, is really a useful one to think about. It explains why Dana encourages Sally to kind of restrict her thoughts so as not to even think about the past, never talk about the past. It's like, we're trying to quarantine off that contaminant so that it doesn't touch your current life here.
Yeah, and it's a familiar theme. Of course, we've seen from, the Jessicas who think that you're contaminated by association from people and things like this.
In terms of like Trisha Martin and her family, is that what you were
yeah.
thinking? Oh, I guess like, and what if people see you talking to Enid and think it's me? I'll be contaminated by Enid's dorkiness. Yeah.
Yeah, or like we don't want Robin in PBA or they'll call us the tubby betas, butterball alphas, and we don't want the slut in the cheerleaders because they'll call us the cheerleader sluts. Whatever. We observed in Nowhere to Run that Dana Larson, there was a lack of emotional maturity in a sense of she wasn't able necessarily to receive some of the family problems that Emily was trying to share with her or like support her in that way. And she was very just like, oh, I'm sure it's good to have a positive attitude kind of thing. And so that is really consistent with how she deals with stuff in this book. And I did find it really just interesting to see more examples of what the friendship dynamic is between the droids, because it just is so true that some groups of friends have a certain way of operating and way of communicating. Like that's what it is. And when it's not like that, it can be uncomfortable. And like, it just felt so real that like, in contrast to other friend groups we see in the book, the droids, even though they're constantly practicing, they spend so much time with each other. To some extent, they probably know each other very well and are very close, but like she has to totally put on for them. Everything she says is like so carefully crafted. It says, it felt strange to be nervous about talking to them. There's a discomfort.
It's almost like they're more coworkers than friends, which I think is actually a dynamic that you get when you, like, if you have a group of friends that you always play board games with, if you have a group of friends you always do X or Y with, it like can be kind of weird to be like, hey guys, stop everything. I need to tell you about the fact that I have a girl coming to live with me. But you do need to tell them. You tell everyone all the time, I have a girl coming to live with me. She's my cousin. Dana even realizes that it is weird that she's making such a big deal. She goes, I don't know why I'm making such a big deal about it. I just want to tell you that my cousin Sally is coming to stay with my family for a while. She'll be going to school here. It's like, oh yeah, duh. This is actually not that big a deal.
Well, then it says she didn't know why she was so nervous. She told herself firmly that Sally would probably turn out to be a great kid and she'd really like her. So meaning the concern is that she isn't a great kid and she's not going to like her.
There's this weird kind of what one might think as a Pascal's gun, which I think we can now, it's like a Pascal's misdirect.
Pascal's herring.
Pascal's herring, of course. Thank you. A blonde herring, we might call it. Where there's all of this anxiety around Sally's age. Emily asks how old she is. And Dana thinks that was one direct question Dana didn't want to answer. She's a junior, she said after a moment's hesitation. And so it feels like it's going to be set up to be like this huge moment where her true age comes out, but that never happens. There are several of those kinds of Pascal herrings in the text. And honestly, I kind of like it. I think it's more realistic. I think in the real world, I get so anxious about all sorts of things that never pay off in any kind of big kind of tennis schedule way. That just kind of are small little like, I feel nervous about this thing, so I'm going to lie about her age or lie by omission or whatever. But like, it never actually matters. I think that's a more realistic way to think about things, and I love it.
Totally. Dana and Jeremy talk, and we get Jeremy being irritated and resentful about the fact that Sally's moving in. There was one line that really did make me pause, and I still am trying to figure out what it meant because it feels meaningful. Dana's like, what's gotten into you? And he says, nothing. There are just too many people in my life already, okay? And I thought, what does he mean by that? Is there some, and maybe we'll find out in some later book. I don't remember finding out, but I'm like, it's such a specific thing to, it's such a sort of, I don't know, unusual, like there are too many people in his life. What does that mean? Did you get anything else from that?
Well, so that was one of the other, not a herring exactly, but maybe a loose thread was Jeremy has like very strong negative feelings about Sally coming in. But I think you're right. This idea, there are just too many people in my life already. Okay. Like, is it just like, ugh, is it like too many people in my house? Like I already feel crowded in my house and now one more person's coming in, but that doesn't make a ton of sense because famously he moves up to the attic where there's even more space and it's actually nicer than being in his room and he has more privacy. Is it that, I mean, he says, he imitates his mom's voice and says, be nice, kids. Try to be sensitive and thoughtful. Sally's had a hard time. God, I'm already sick of her. I'm wondering if what he means is there are already too many people who are getting the attention and love and care that I want in my life. Like there are already too many people. That. Yeah, it's very weird.
It's not really, yeah. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's a later book about him that like, maybe there is something else going on that we learn.
I hope so. Because otherwise it's just teen angst. And I love angst, but I think, come on.
Then we get the puppy.
Let's get this puppy.
Jess brings him home.
It's an emergency. A puppy emergency.
Oh. Jessica's like, what? You brought home a puppy? She goes, but Jess, you don't even like dogs. Remember how much you hated taking care of Mrs. Bramble's dog? At least that was ages ago. We were in 6th grade. I love dogs now. So that is a callback to Sweet Valley Twins.
But it's a call forward, right? Because has the twins come out yet?
Well, remember we observed recently that they have started coming out because it said, remember we had that announcement that was like, tell your kid sister. And then we also had a reference. We also had a reference recently to Sweet Valley Twins, I think number 2 Teacher's Pet with the ballet, I think happened. But this is one. I feel like it's I want to say this is number 6, maybe. I don't know the number, but I'm pretty sure it's the one called Sneaking Out. And Jessica's supposed to watch the dog or something, or stay at a house to watch the dog, and she goes to a concert and she leaves the dog, and the dog gets lost. And I think the same thing happens where it's like the dog gets lost and it ends up coming home. And it doesn't matter. I'm like, what? So they did the same thing? I don't know. Unless I
A
remember it
sixth
wrong.
grader sneaking out to a concert stresses me out a lot.
I was stressed out reading that book, Robert.
That's number 5,
Oh.
but it's hard to see.
Oh, it says here. She snuck away to a rock concert.
Oh,
It is that one.
that's so.
But it's hilarious. It was a miracle the incident had ended happily. And then that happened again here. So they tell us on page 9.
A lot of
This
miracles.
is what's coming.
A lot of miracles. Yeah, they do. I mean, Francine's vision of what dog ownership looks like and feels like, I'm not convinced that Francine has had a dog. It feels like she's only seen Homeward Bound.
So Liz is like, Jess, but then she goes out and meets the dog and suddenly she loves him because he's a pudgy little golden lab, tail wagging exuberantly, standing in the passenger seat. His front paws rested on the window, which was open enough to allow him air. Elizabeth stared, trying to take in every feature of the puppy at once. He had brown eyes and a healthy share of fat underneath his golden yellow fur. He seemed to be grinning with pure delight as he looked up at the twins. And now Liz is in love with him too.
Which is
so cute.
Very relatable. I mean, this dog is a stunner.
He's grunting and yipping in ecstasy as Elizabeth fondles his silky ears. He's so cute. You could just see him.
I love him. And then we get our first, or maybe not our first, but like an indication that they don't totally understand dogs. Like so some guy, was it at the baseball stadium or something, was just giving them out?
Yeah, it's very questionable.
And then Elizabeth asks Jessica if he's housebroken. And Jessica goes, Liz, how could you even think I'd bring an unhousebroken puppy into our home? It's like, wait, what?
And she's like, but no, he's not.
Yeah. And they're like, we better get some newspaper. And Liz goes, are you sure he's housebroken or at least paper trained? And it's like, they do absolutely no training for this dog whatsoever.
For the Gen Zers out there, quote unquote paper trained, this is before they had pee pads, okay? So newspaper was the original pee pads. So you put the newspaper down, and if the puppy pees inside, it's going to at least go on the newspaper, and then it, quote unquote, learns to go on the newspaper.
But they do absolutely no dog training at all. And the disasters that we know should happen by bringing a golden lab puppy into a home and leaving him kind of unattended for hours at a time goes pretty well, actually.
Well, yeah, there's one, in Too Much in Love, we had our first domestic appliance disaster with the washing machine. And in this one, we have another, just has to call the washing machine repairman again. I don't know why she had to look up a phone number again. She already should have had the number from the first time. But all that happens is the dog chews one piece of the washing machine, okay? Let me tell you, when I have had a puppy who I didn't let, be just roaming around, out of my sight, I got chewed up 2 computer cords, 2 pairs at least of glasses,
At least.
my PhD diploma, who I cut to me emailing the registrar saying, you're going to think this is a joke, but my dog ate my diploma. Can you send me another one? And they were like, okay, but you have to send us the chewed up bits. So I never did it.
Wait, you never did what? You never got your unchewed up diploma?
Yeah, so I don't have it.
Wait, why don't we deal with that?
I
Do you want me to
should
email them?
actually. I should, yeah. And he also chewed up randomly my advisor's book. Of all the books on my shelf, he took my advisor's book and chewed it up. Anyway, no comment.
I mean, between the diploma and the advisor's book, I think this dog had a critical analysis of your experiences.
All right, okay, we gotta keep going.
Fine.
We're only in chapter 2.
And really, that's skipping Elizabeth's dramatic saving of a vase. We almost had another vase breaking. And I know you've been tracking the vase breaking, but dog almost breaks vase, does not break vase.
Sally comes home.
With a vengeance.
Dana is very friendly, is trying to connect with her, is kind of pushy. You could tell Sally kind of feels like she's invading her space a little bit. She's very impressed with Dana's fashionableness and everything. But when Dana takes her to her room, she's being very chatty. She's like, I'll stay and watch you unpack, okay? The eager smile on Dana's face was too much to resist. I don't know. There's some discomfort, I think. And then Dana's like, oh, you could come help out with our band. She's like, okay. And then Dana's like, why don't I take you to the mall and get you some new clothes? So pretty much like 5 seconds in, Dana has told her like she's not good enough as she is.
It really feels like parallels with Liz, where it's like, you ask her what her favorite music is, and she's like, I don't really care about music. I
Yeah.
guess I like anything. And instead of like hearing that, and it's like, no, well, then you'll be the manager for, it's very much like, oh, you could write for the Oracle, that Liz always does.
Yes, like she doesn't care to find out what she's actually interested in. Malls are wild.
Don't you think malls are wild? They're like the new Main Street USA. Know what I mean? I love.
So funny. Sally's getting stressed out that Dana's pushing stuff on her that she doesn't actually like. But she thinks if letting Dana pick out her clothes would help Dana accept her, she was ready to agree. She'd agree to anything to gain Dana's friendship.
That's so sad and so relatable and believable and just like woof.
Yeah. Again, I think a little bit of Dana invading her space. Like Dana comes into the change room with her, embarrassed, and she jumps up, startles, embarrassed. Sally unlatched the door to let her in. She wasn't used to having someone with her when she changed. And there's this sense of like, discomfort around that. You think also it's like this girl's been in a million homes. A lot of them she hasn't felt welcome. We know there's been difficulties. She probably has been in a lot of situations where she hasn't had privacy. Like privacy is probably important to her. I felt for her in that moment.
Yeah, I do think it's really, until you pointed out her Dana's kind of encroaching on Sally's space, it hadn't really occurred to me, but it is very much like, because Dana sees Sally as like more of a charity case than a friend, it feels like there are no boundaries, and like Sally couldn't possibly need privacy or any kind of boundaries or any time or space away from me. It's like, oh, I can bestow all of this stuff upon you. Why would you possibly want even a moment away from me? And I did want to ask, because the changing room drama felt off to me, but I've never been like a 16-year-old girl. I think I've seen movies where like girls are in changing rooms together, kind of doing like a fashion montage kind of thing. And I couldn't get a read for how off that is. So I was wondering if you could give some insight as a current 16-year-old girl.
So she's in the change room, it's locked, and Dana says, where are you? She jumps up, startled, and then Dana rattles the door and says, let me in. Embarrassed, Sally lets her in. And so I think that Dana most likely is doing something that it's like would be completely probably unremarkable for whatever girlfriends, like maybe she and Emily go do this, she and Emily let each other in. It's like nothing. Like I think it's probably very normal for them. But she's assuming, that that's the case with Sally, and clearly that's not the case with Sally. So I think it's not that she's doing anything so terrible, but it's like it is not being respectful of someone's space to make that assumption, right?
That makes sense.
Especially when you barely know them. Like I would never, like someone who I'm just developing a relationship with, I wouldn't be like rattle a lock on a change room and say, let me in. I think that's, but I'm an adult and I understand that, Dana doesn't understand that.
Yeah. And is it like Dana, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, does Dana not understand?
It's a combination,
Okay.
I think. Like part of it is a pattern of her personality that she's never thinking about Sally or Sally's actual needs
Right.
or circumstances or like what might Sally, like it's never that. So I think it's probably a combination. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it makes perfect sense. And not that Dana necessarily needs a defense, but I do understand in some ways why Dana is behaving this way, because she is getting all sorts of signals. She's getting some signals from Sally, like, give me some space. But then there's also Sally, like, so they're in the changing room. Dana says, you look great, really. A warm glow spread through Sally as her cousin beamed at her. It was heaven to be the center of Dana's attention. She was so lively, so spontaneous, so fun. Sally couldn't remember anyone ever making such a fuss over her before. So it gets at this kind of entangled, confusing thing where it's like, she does want privacy and space, but she also likes it when she's getting the attention. And like they're all 16 and 17, they're figuring this stuff out, and it's feels real.
Yeah, it feels like codependent to me, where it's like a role where Dana's sort of the controlling one, Sally's kind of the subservient one, and they're both letting that happen. Sally's not setting boundaries, and they're both reinforcing this, and then they both, in different ways, get resentful about it. Like it's serving them in some ways, and they get pissed off about it eventually. So
That's
Why?
very interesting.
why? Oh,
You don't see any parallels. One person is gorgeous, very fashion forward, kind of dominating. The other is a little more meager, a little quieter,
a sort of
little
ugly
more...
troll that could never attract a hot blonde man at GAY in London.
Yeah, I've been getting a little like, oh, in some ways, like I benefit from the fact that you're very, and in other ways,
So you
I
think
see
you're
myself
the
as a Sally.
You're the
Yeah.
Sally and I'm the Dana?
Mhm.
That's hurtful. Because Dana's a piece of shit in this book.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see why you might feel that way.
No
But I
comment.
hope you learn from it.
I would never rattle your door and expect that you should want me in your change room. You're making such a face, what?
I
When
could
have I-
100% see you rattling my door, trying to get into my changing room.
Okay, fine, maybe I would, but like, that's different. We've been friends for decades. These girls just met. A small detail.
Mhm.
In, I think, book 9, we talked about like Roger and Olivia and thrift stores and like the sort of socioeconomics of the different ways of engaging with thrift stores. Like, and there's a moment here where Dana's like, yeah, we can also find really great stuff at thrift stores and it's also cheap. And Sally's thinking to herself, like, oh, like thrift stores is like where I've been always shopping, like because I've had to, not because it's trendy. Like, look how different we are, or whatever.
Yeah. Can we
Okay.
get to the perky pet?
Perky Pet Shop, which is also in the mall.
You know I love a pet shop puppy. Do you get that reference?
Oh, you're like Instagram?
Ding, ding, ding.
Wait, is that right?
That is absolutely right. My AOL instant messenger screen name was Pet Shop Puppy.
Wait, so that was your aim, and I'm remembering it. So we're
Yeah.
saying bravo for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's a
We're
deepish cut for-
obsessed with you.
Okay, because you didn't really react that much.
Sorry,
Understood.
I think I was frozen with admiration. You know how somebody's like, that's how I was. Beautiful deep cut, really well observed. I cannot believe you remember that.
Thank you. Okay, Perky Pet Shop, Perky Pet Shop.
There's this kind of, I mean, I guess sometimes it's like they have hijinks for hijinks, and sometimes they're like, oh, the hijinks make sense. And I'm having trouble understanding. Elizabeth and Jess feel very strongly that no one can know that they have a dog. So they're like kind of casing the joint, looking around Perky Pet and making sure no one will see them, and like very worried someone would see their stuff. And I guess what they're thinking is like, oh, if someone sees us a Perky Pet, they'll know we have a dog, and they'll tell our mom and dad that we have a dog at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Did that check out to you, or were you like,
Yeah.
nah? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a small town.
I guess it is a small town.
So
You know how
they
small
bump
town
it.
gossip is.
They bump into Dana and Sally, and they have the quick thinking of saying that they're buying dog collars for a punk event to wear on themselves. And Dana's like, cool, I should try it.
We have a little bit of a foreshadowing, which is also echo of what happens, I guess, in Sneaking Out, Sweet Valley Twins #5, because they're talking about getting a collar and a leash, and Jessica says, I still think it's cruel to tie up a little baby like that. And it's like I've never ever heard anyone espouse that belief, but it does set us up for our cute little baby running free because he's not tied up as well as we thought.
Mm-hmm.
We also get what can only be clearly a Pascal's gun for the next book. The second that Jessica's like, oh my gosh, Maria Santelli and Sandra Bacon are over there, I was like, oh, okay, the next book is something about Maria. Because we haven't heard about her since cheerleading tryouts.
We get Dana decides Sally needs a full makeover. She's like, okay.
New life, new look, the works.
Pretend your old life never happened. She scowls when Sally brings up the past and tells her not to tell anyone she had to repeat a grade. Now,
Well, sorry. Again, there's this just kind of like this weird lying that only serves to, I guess, show how anxious Dana is
yeah.
about Sally's precariousness. And I wonder, is Dana insecure about her own role at school or with the droids or what have you? Like, I could see Enid being like, oh yeah, well, if they find out that you're 17, not 16, if they find out that you're repeated a grade, who cares? That doesn't change how I think about you. That doesn't change how anybody will think about me. And Dana, it feels like there's more of a precarity there where she's like, if they find out that about you, it will contaminate me, and then I'll lose my social standing.
Yeah, I think that's just that's her journey. Like she has immaturity there. She has some lower self-esteem maybe in some ways than Enid does, or whatever, like where she's so much concerned with these things.
Interesting. We're now trying to name our new puppy. Jessica has almost like a Gen Z sense of humor about this.
She has an actual sense of irony, which Elizabeth does not.
Yeah. And it feels very like modern and fresh. Like it doesn't even feel like an 80s sense of irony. It feels very now and current. She says, how about Spot? And Liz goes, are you kidding? Spot? He doesn't have any spots, you dope. And Jess goes, I know. That's why it's such a good name. It's like, it just feels like such a fresh take. I love it.
The Wakefields are home. They had a great time at the resort. The girls clean up some pee before they can figure it out.
Yeah, it's very strange. So they name the dog Prince Albert. Prince Albert pees all over the kitchen. Then Jess takes him away and Liz is cleaning it up. And Mrs. Wakefield's like, did you spill something? And I guess maybe it like looks enough like iced tea or lemonade or something.
Oh, that's very, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sally is at school and just feeling uncomfortable and like the clothes don't fit her. They aren't who she is. But anytime she thinks like, oh, maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should change my clothes. Maybe I should skip the droids practice and just go home because I'm tired. She remembered a girl she had known in a group home where she stayed once between foster homes. That girl, Mary Beth, had told Sally, when I get a good thing, I'm going to hang on to it with all I've got. Hang on with all I've got, Sally repeated to herself. That's what I've got to do. And so anytime she thinks about defying Dana's kind of very strict orders and being more authentic to herself, she reminds that she needs to hold on with all she's got.
The droids ask her to be their manager. She says, okay.
And the big thing about why she says okay is that no one had ever asked her to be a part of any kind of group before, and it felt great. She just hoped she could learn to like their music. And it's sad. She's like so desperate for some kind of approval that like, or some kind of home or some kind of group.
Around the seeds being planted for the next book, at the droids practice, Dana or someone suggests that they write a song called The Ballad of Maria and Michael. It's a Romeo and Juliet story. And the story that we learn is that Maria Santelli, who's a cheerleader we've peripherally heard of before, is dating Michael Harris. Their parents don't know and aren't supposed to know. It's a big secret because in the past there was a bad business deal between the two fathers and the families are bitter enemies. So that's that story.
I love that they don't let you even get a second of like, oh, that kind of seems like Romeo and Juliet. The next line is like, yeah, it's Romeo and Juliet. And you're like, yeah, no, we get it. We get it, Francine.
We learned that Sally is actually secretly interested in working at the Oracle, but then she organizes some sheet music for the droids and they say, oh my gosh, Sally, thanks. And she's like, oh God, okay, I better keep doing this to secure my whatever.
Sally's at home just having kind of basic normal interactions with Uncle Hal and Aunt Anne. Ooh, wait a minute. Aunt Anne? And we've said it Mall Pretzel?
Wow, 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 wow.
Wow.
Wow. So Dana was biting the pretzel. She really wants to bite her mother. That's symbolic what she wants to be doing to her mother's biting her. Wow. Dana has issues. Okay.
And Francine Pascal invented Auntie Anne's pretzels, which is probably very lucrative for her. So Sally's really trying to fit in, and so she's like going above and beyond. She's taking out the garbage. She's doing Dana and Jeremy's chores. And you can the parents are like, don't take advantage of her. Which
And
the kids kind of are.
And Sally thinks to herself, keep doing this, be helpful, and they won't get rid of you.
We get more of Jeremy being rude.
And another thing that felt real was like Sally gets increasingly frustrated because it's like she can't do anything right. Like she's trying to please them. It's like, Jeremy like gave up his room for her or whatever, and so he's already annoyed. So she's like trying to please him and like not take things from them or do what they want or whatever. But like that seems to piss them off too eventually. So it's like because the parents are telling them to be nice to her, so it's like they ask her what she wants to watch on TV, and she says, "Oh, it doesn't matter, whatever you want." And then he like glares at her. So it's like she's like, "Well, what am I supposed to?" It's like she can't win.
Yeah. And then it's made even worse because the parents highlight how great Sally is. She's a good kid, never complains a bit. Although God knows she's got a right to complain the way she's been kicked around. You could learn a thing or two from her, Dana. A strange thump in her chest made Dana frown. I never knew you were dissatisfied with me before, she said with a twinge of sarcasm. Oh, Dana, we're not dissatisfied with you. You know perfectly well that's not what I meant. I'm just saying that Sally's a very generous, helpful girl and a pleasure to have around. That's all. And Dana stares woodenly at the TV. Well, it sure sounds like you're comparing me to her and I'm coming up short. And I'll be honest, like this is kind of framed as Dana being petulant, but she's right. She's actually seeing the situation and is calling the bullshit of her parents. And we get more bad parents. Mr. Larson says, don't be childish, Dana. Of course, we're not comparing you. And it's like, yeah, you literally just did.
100%. I don't think it's trying to make Dana be petulant. I think the book knows that this is a real moment where like, and again, that's why these books are good because it's complexity. Like, yeah, the parents, I think in this moment, like I think most of the time the parents are mostly whatevering, like not doing anything bad, so bad. But when the parent says you could learn a thing or two from her, that's a bad thing to say. And that is explicitly comparing her, and like they should realize that. And so then they react by calling her childish when she picks up on it. It's like they're not really like that's not good.
But they do have some points that make sense. Like,
yes,
I hope you aren't going to get in the habit of letting Sally do your chores for you. I don't want you to take advantage of her generosity.
yes.
And it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
100%.
But it's like, just do a little bit better.
But that's why I like it, because this is realistic. Is like people don't always say the right thing, and then if you say the wrong thing and then it's combining with something that could set someone off, could change a whole course of events. So that's actually, I like that.
And sometimes it's not even saying anything. It's like a facial expression or like eyebrows or something.
Eyebrow. Yeah, the wrong eyebrow at the wrong time.
It's killed many a person.
I mean, never forget the right hair part on the wrong person can lead to almost universal disdain by the peer group.
Never forget that kind of unsubstantiated claim from a brother and sister kind of quote unquote researcher team.
I love that you're kind of increasingly adopting quote unquote. It's fun.
Oh, thank you.
Then we get the introduction of Mark Riley, who is a friend of Jeremy, and he shows up at a door because people love to do that in these books. And Sally and him are like, ooh la la, who are you?
And he's hot. And something that I like about the way that Sally is depicted is he keeps talking to her. He's like trying to give her advice and stuff. And as he continued talking, Sally knew that Mark was attracted to her. I like that we see that Sally is good at reading people. Sally is good at understanding what's happening and what the dynamics are. And I think that's really accurate to people who have system involvement and who have had to like kind of negotiate and navigate difficult situations in order to live and survive.
Yeah, like a hyper awareness.
Yeah. It's just like an accurate, appropriate kind of reading of people. And I like that we don't just see Sally as a charity case. We rather see that she does have some assets that she has gotten from her difficult situation. And I think that's
kind of same as Regina.
Oh,
like Regina's sort of very like she's so perceptive and she's so good at reading people, but she actually like downplays it and like hides it, I think. But anyway, that's another story. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get a book about Regina coming up soon.
Okay.
No comment. All right. Ba, ba, ba,
Jer-
ba, ba.
Jeremy's
Mark, try-
increasingly weird. They leave. We've got some more dog antics.
We get a nice moment from Lila where Jess brings Lila to meet the dog, and first Lila's like, well, I don't know if he's a purebred, bloodline's very important. But then as soon as she like touches the puppy, she's like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. I love him. And she completely softens. I loved it.
It
Oh,
is the line.
yes.
I don't
Yes.
know. I'd rather be sure of what I was getting. Bloodlines are so important. It's just like it sets me up to want to read the Fowler saga so much.
Okay, but then this is so Jessica's telling Lila about how she's hiding him from the parents,
Oh
and
no.
Lila makes a bitter smile and she says, I could probably get 10 puppies and sit them around the dining room table and my dad wouldn't even notice. It's so we must recognize Lila's pain. Okay.
She's broken. We get that washing machine play that we talked about earlier. We've got another kind of domestic disaster, but it's just that he chewed through a hose. And so the hose is on the ground.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Jeffrey's over for dinner. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like so Jeffrey finds out about the dog. Alice has a girlish laugh.
Yeah, we've got to do that. Sorry. I know that we want to rush, but like we cannot rush by.
The
So
girlish
Ned
laugh.
is serving up chicken and potatoes. I guess you must be all settled in by now, Jeffrey. The great thing about California is the sun. In Oregon, it was always either raining or just about to rain. I moved here so I wouldn't mildew. With a girlish laugh, Mrs. Wakefield said, well, it looks as though you're pretty well dried out now.
Ew. That's
Yeah.
gross. Like Mrs. Robinson. Like what? That's perverted. Well dried out. Ew.
She sends Elizabeth an approving smile. It's just like
Ew.
icky, ooh, the icky. Do not do
Creeper.
this.
Creeper.
Creeper, what a freaker.
Liz is thinking, as she usually does, about how Ned is an attractive man to have for a father. They hear the howl, they have the hijinks around the dog, they tell Jeff about the puppy. And then back to the Larsons.
And this is just Mark calling to ask her out. And we again get this idea that this very accurate idea that the boys in these books and the boys in our society just like literally do not take no for an answer. And it's confusing because she's like laughing and it does seem like, no, I don't think it's confusing. I think it's very clear that she's just saying no. And he refuses to take no at all. Makes me feel gross.
Yeah, I mean, what we call this is rape culture.
Yeah.
This is rape culture. Dana and her mom fight about Dana cleaning her room.
Dana wants to go to the movies to see Bringing Up Baby.
Oh, have you seen it?
I haven't. I imagine it's one of your faves.
We watched it in Morrison's class. It's like a screwball comedy. It's Katharine Hepburn. They have like a cheetah. Or
I believe it's
monkey.
a leopard.
They have something, whatever, in their house.
A pet leopard.
I think it's basically like just a little bit of a perfect storm. Like probably Dana having a messy room is something she's argued about with her parents before, you know. So it's a thing of like the timing's bad because she's about to go see this thing she's excited about, and her mom gets on her case. And then when she says, "Well, let me do it later," her mom says, "Well, Sally's room is clean." So it's like that all put together makes her now being even more resentful to Sally. So, like she and Jeremy are basically like they have this like now veiled hostility to Sally, but they like tell her to go take the car, and she's like, okay. Oh, there's also a line where like Jeremy or Dana says like it's not as if she was abused, and I'm like, was she not abused? We don't know this, and there's lots of possibility that she was vis-a-vis statistics. Anyhow, so they tell her to take the car. She takes the car. She goes to the Oracle office. Of course, Liz is there because I'm sure this week there's some special assignment for the Oracle that makes her stay after school on special extra time on the Oracle, like there always is. She, of course, confides in Liz about her whole story and tells her, don't tell anyone. And Liz is like supportive of her, like, oh, I'm sure it's just like an adjustment. And like Dana and Jeremy will come around. Like everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then she's asking Dana for fashion advice to please her and thinks, okay, I'm going to score some points with Dana. And
If
she
it
tells
makes
her
her
that
happy, that's all I care about. Cheryl Crow.
and she tells her that she like had a nice conversation with Liz Wakefield, and Dana has the most insane reaction, like, which is, well, if you want to be friends with her, I can't stop you. And it's like fully psychotic. Like it would have been crazy even if like what I thought it was gonna be was that she would tell her like I want to work on the Oracle, and Dana was gonna be like, oh well, then I guess you won't have time for the band, which already is not her business to have an opinion about and like would already be stupid. But the fact that she literally just was like, oh, Liz is nice, like she's just saying she might possibly have a possibility of a new friend, and Dana's like mad about it is such a huge red flag. And Sally realizes Dana doesn't want me to have other friends. And then she starts to turn and she feels like, starts to feel angry about it. And she's like, that's not fair. That's not fair. Like, why is Dana being so controlling of me? But then she pushes it down because she thinks, well, I got to stick around. So
Yeah.
I better just accept it.
Do Dana and Liz have any kind of beef? I don't think so, right? I think it's just her having any other friend because she says, forget about the droids and go after a busy social life. I'll understand. So it's nothing wrong with Elizabeth in particular.
I can't, there's no beef to my knowledge. No beef to my knowledge. So Liz calls Sally and says, hey, I'm going shopping tomorrow, whatever. Do you want to come with me? And Sally's like, ah, on the inside, I really, really want to. But then she says no, because she's not allowed to have any more friends.
And Liz models kind of like appropriate asking someone for something. Like it feels to
Taking
me
no
like
for an answer.
yeah, it's like very contrasted to Mark's behavior where she's like, well, like it would only be a couple of hours. I could go anytime. And then Sally goes, I'd like to, but I just can't. And Liz is like, okay, are you all right? You just sound tired. Like it's a very different vibe.
Yeah, it's like nice and normal.
Mhm.
At dinner with the Wakefields, Jessica suggests getting a dog. And the parents are like, I don't know if you're ready for this. Remember Mrs. Bramble? Jessica's like, no, I am. And Liz is supportive of it to them too. And they're like, well, we'll think about it.
I feel like Mrs. Bramble gets like kind of short shrift in this. Like that poor woman, she entrusted Jessica to watch her dog, and then Jessica lets the dog run away. And they're like, I don't think Miss Bramble ever recovered. Yeah, I would absolutely never fucking recover if someone who was supposed to be watching my sweet baby bear Poppy just let her run away.
Yeah,
Would
she
never
came home
recover.
though. She came home.
I don't think I'd recover.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's whatever, but like it was a short-lived whatever. But yeah, no, it's bad.
Like you are saying it's whatever. That's how it feels. No, Robert, just if it makes her happy, it can't be that bad. You got to do anything to stay on this podcast.
I don't
This
even
is
know
your
what you're
last
talking.
chance.
I don't know what you're talking about.
This is your last chance to have a podcast. Just whatever she says, just let it happen. It's totally fine. This is your last chance. If you get kicked off this podcast, you'll never be on another podcast again. You're right.
So they take Prince Albert on a walk. Prince Albert decides to go on strike, which is what we used to call it when my sister's late dog Dasha used to sit in the middle of the street.
Oh, I
or the
remember
sidewalk.
Dasha.
Yeah, she was the sweetest dog in the world, and she would just stop and refuse to get up. No, with a puppy, it's a lot easier to manage. But anyhow, he ends up getting out of the collar, and he gets loose. And they, look for him for 10 minutes, whatever, can't find him, and say, "Well, I guess we lost him." They're very, very sad.
They're very, very sad, but it's like
they work too hard.
They didn't work too hard. Maybe behind the scenes, they call every animal shelter in Sweet Valley, but it
up
seems
posters.
Yeah, it seems like they don't do anything.
No, they don't log on to their neighborhood Facebook group.
They don't get on nextdoor.com. I wonder if this dog is chipped. Probably not.
The Larsons say to the kids in the morning, kids, tonight we're having a family meeting. We have like a thing to discuss. And Sally's like, oh, I'm done for. I guess they're telling me that like they don't want me to stay with them anymore.
Which is, I guess, relatable insofar as she's been bounced around so much and she's had so much rejection. But there is certainly nothing in the text that would make anyone assume that.
No, but I guess I do understand like that she's so sensitive to it and so scared of it. And it's like, I can sort of see why she'd be worried about it.
I see that. I hear that. Thank you.
And I was also thinking like the parents should be sensitive to the fact that her situation has been so precarious that teasing announcements might not be the best way to, you know?
Yeah, I thought this was very, I mean, it feels very like Wakefield stunt style of parenting, where it's just
Yes.
like, we're all going to be home tonight. Why don't we just,
Yeah. Like on
like,
Housewives,
sure.
whenever someone is adopting someone else's kid that they've been raising, they talk about it with the kid and like are like, are you comfortable with this? How do you feel about it? The kid knows it's coming. It's not like a surprise.
Wait, how often on Housewives is someone adopting the kid they've been raising? You made it sound like it
Like,
was multiple times.
I don't know, 2, 3 times I've seen this.
It's kind of sweet, isn't it?
Oh yeah, when it's a good situation, it's the sweetest. Yeah.
Do you think
I'm just saying,
somebody,
like, I don't know that that's something you surprise a kid with. I don't think that's how that should be communicated.
I agree.
There was a line that I thought was so good. I thought this
Mhm.
is beautiful. It's now the end of the school day, and like Jeremy and Sally and Dana are all driving home together.
Mhm.
And Sally slid into the front seat and buckled. And so she's anticipating now they're going home for this family meeting. She's assuming she's going to be kicked out. She slid into the front seat and buckled her seatbelt. She felt light and weightless and had the crazy thought that she might float away if she were not anchored down. Beautiful, beautiful writing. Because, of course, number one, there's the metaphor of not having an anchor, right? And being anchorless and not having a home.
Mhm.
But also the description of the feelings, feeling light and weightless and floating. It's like, that's also how anxiety, like anxiety is like up energy and you always want to ground and go down. This type of like grounding yourself is like also like a physical, emotional, energetic thing. So I thought it was like such a nice sort of combination, like metaphor of what's actually going on, but also how that would feel. It's like it's a panic. It could be a panic that she's in, right? Because she's like, I'm about to be homeless again. It feels so realistic.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
All right, then we get into the goofiness.
Yeah, so this is the deplorability that Pardo alluded to in her kind of seductive and captivating and tantalizing A-plot description, which is as we're driving home, we see two rough-looking hitchhikers along the side of the road. Jeremy puts on his turn signal and slows down. Snapping back from her inner pain, Sally goes, "Don't pick those guys up." "Why not?" Jeremy said coldly. Sally glanced out the rear window. The two guys were jogging toward them. One of them flicked his burning cigarette into the grass at the side of the road. She leaned forward, again grasping Jeremy's arm. "I know that kind of guy, and they're a lot of trouble, believe me." "Listen, I'm a big boy, and if I want to pick them up, I will." "But Jeremy, I swear I know what I'm talking about." "Jeremy, I don't think you should," Dana put in. But even as she spoke, the two scruffy-looking guys opened the backseat doors and got in on either side of Dana.
I just want to say that I think this is the third time in like the last 3 or 4 books that we've had a character say, "I'm a big boy." We had Stephen say to his parents, "I'm a big boy," about deciding to go on the bell floor. We had Jeffrey say to Liz, "I'm a big boy, I can figure out who to date by myself." And now we have Jeremy saying, "I'm a big boy," about picking up hitchhikers. They love to say I'm a big boy.
They love to say I'm a big boy, and with the exception of
And not be
Jeffrey,
big boys.
not be big boys. I mean, Jeffrey is a big boy.
Yeah, Jeffrey is, of course.
But you're right. 2 out of 3, not big boys. Then things go completely off the rails. They get in. Dana says, "We're only going a couple of blocks. We can drop you off at Madison." And then one of them drapes an arm around her and says, "Hey, relax. We want to go farther than that." Right, Al? Which I think obviously is a double entendre that is disgusting. They suggest going to Kelly's, a den of iniquity and sin. I mean, it's no shady lady, but it's a place where you get drunk and you do bad things.
It's a bar. It's a bar that we know from many books of being the low down place.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Sally, like, her mind is working feverishly. She's trying to figure out how to get the cousins out of this mess. She spent a lot of time on the streets and had run across this type of guy often. They were mostly hot air and rough talk, but some of them carried out their threats.
They also tell Jeremy, like, "We want your wallet." And he's like, "No." And they're like, "Well, if you don't give us the wallet, I'm going to figure out something else to take from your sister. So that I think is the most explicit threat of sexual violence, like to this point. And then they like take them to Kelly's. And can we just summarize this? Because can I do it
Of
really
course.
quickly? Because it actually makes me mad. It's so fucking stupid. So they take them to Kelly's. They're like, get out. And they're like, well, we want you to come with us. We want the girls, or I don't know what. And then Sally's like, because of her quote unquote street smarts, she's like, well, actually, no, I'm just going to go with you. Like, leave them. They're boring. Like, she basically tells them, like, Dana's a prude, like, in her street smart secret language with them. And then she's like, tells Dana and Jeremy, go ahead. Like, I don't want to be your family anyway. Like, I'd rather hang out with them. It's so fucking obvious that she's doing a bit and that she's faking this. And Dana and Jeremy, and this is the deplorable part. Dana and Jeremy are like, huh? What? Like, you want to stay here? Obviously, these men are predators. This is not safe. And she is not safe here. And they both know that. And it's absolutely fucking crazy that they leave her there. And she's like, yeah, get out of here. And they're like, okay, well, I guess if she says so. And then they like drive away. And then they like, quote unquote, realize that she was faking it to save them. So Dana's like, we have to go back. And Jeremy's like, okay, but we need more muscle power. So they go pick up that guy, Mark. And then
And Ken Matthews. And he's got some muscle power.
Wait, also Ken Matthews?
Of
Or is that
course.
joke? Oh, I missed that.
I do want to just quickly, Dana is much more reluctant to leave. Dana says no. Dana says, we can't leave her here. Dana's looking out the back window longingly. So I think Jeremy is the instigator of leaving her, and Dana is a little more interested in not leaving her.
She's still responsible though,
Okay.
even if all that says is she knew it was wrong. Like
Yeah.
but it's like she still did it. Like, no.
That's true.
Then they fucking go back to Kelly's. They like quote unquote save her. Dana has this moment of, she's my sister. And then they leave, and now Dana and Jeremy like her.
It feels like the moment of Bruce Patman and Roger Barrett Patman when they're fighting the forest fires in the best summer ever. And Bruce Patman is like, no, only one of us can go. We can't have all of the Patmans go. Like, and it's like, I'm claiming you as part of my family. This feels like it's trying to be that, but it's just not an earned moment. Dana would not actually feel that they're sisters. So it just feels kind of cheap and tawdry.
So then what happens is they go home, and Dana and Jeremy also, I guess, think that the parents are going to tell her she's leaving. So they're like, don't worry, we're going to support you. And they go in, and there's this little fucking who's on first where the parents are like, our decision is made. And they're like, no. And then they're like, what do you mean no? Like, our decision is actually that we're adopting her. And they're like, yay. What?
The only other weird thing is that Mark goes in too. I'm coming into, I'll fight for you. And it's like, what are the family dynamics that like, oh, Jeremy's best friend should have a vote in whether Sally stays in the house or not.
Family meeting.
Truly, truly unhinged.
It makes me so angry because it's like I mean, obviously we've seen this a million times, but like similar to just say Wrong Kind of Girl or whatever. It's like there has to be the reason this is so infuriating is because it's like this whole book is so realistic, and we're seeing these really real complex dynamics and challenges and conflict happen, and we obviously want to see that resolved. In real life, this isn't gonna get resolved that way. What would have happened if there wouldn't have been this fucking stupid hitchhiker emergency? Could there have been a way for Dana and Jeremy to realize that they were acting like pieces of shit and that they should be kind to this girl? Like, how could have that happened without this? Like, it's so lazy. It's so fucking lazy, and it's an insult. It's an insult to the reader. It's an insult to fans of Sweet Valley, because we are learning such interesting and valuable sometimes lessons here about families, about relationships, about things. And it's like, it just does such a disservice to the whole project.
I can hear that. And I'm sorry, it sounds like you're kind of working through some personal feelings about this. And I'm sorry.
They say, well, don't worry, we're adopting you. They're all happy. Then really crazy happens. We're back at the Wakefields. And apparently now Liz and John Pfeiffer are best Judies because John Pfeiffer's calling her randomly with
Oracle.
Yeah, but The fact of him calling her just to gossip?
Well, she's eyes and ears. I
Yeah,
buy
but-
it.
Okay. So he calls her to tell her so okay, they get the puppy back. They all say, yay, it's actually Prince Albert. But
Which
the parents,
is truly unbelievable.
of course.
Also, it's still bad parenting. You don't surprise a child or children with a dog. Like, this should be the result of discussion. We should be picking the dog out together. Like, this is just bad parenting.
Yeah, and then the big gossip, the big news, and we also, I guess, hear from Kara, is about Maria and Michael.
What? What about Maria? Jessica demanded. She and Michael just got engaged, Kara exclaimed. Elizabeth was stunned. What? You're kidding! Did she tell you that? Kara nodded vigorously. But it's a huge secret because they don't want their parents to know. But if they can't tell their parents, Elizabeth cut in, a worried frown on her face, doesn't that mean they probably shouldn't get married at all? Besides,
Ding, ding, ding.
I mean, yeah. Besides, they're still in high school. Oh, Liz, come on. Where's your sense of romance? Jessica scolded, thrusting Prince Albert into her twin's arm. So did he propose to her and everything? Kara shook her head. I don't know. Maria could barely talk sense. She was so excited. And I think we should do something for her. Have an engagement party or something. Did you tell Lila yet? No, I came right here. Jessica turned back to Elizabeth. Liz, could you walk Prince Albert just this once, I promise? Winky face. We've got to go upstairs and call Lila. Elizabeth nodded, hugging the squirming puppy and watching as Jessica dragged Kara upstairs by the arm. She heard the door slam as they entered Jessica's room. Getting married, Elizabeth thought. That was crazy. How could Maria and Michael get married if they couldn't even admit to their parents that they were dating each other? Elizabeth shook her head, trying to see it as a wonderful romantic adventure. But she couldn't. All she could see was deception and trouble, and somebody was bound to get hurt. I don't know, Albert, she whispered. All I can say is, I hope I'm wrong. What lies ahead for Maria and Michael? Happiness or heartache? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 34, Forbidden Love. Now you've got to look on like you're researching. What you researching?
Age to marry with or without parental consent in California in the 80s. I can't find it. But I think it was older. I think it was older than they are, so I'm confused.
Well, I guess we'll do some of that research for next week's, I guess.
Yeah, good idea. Thoughts, feelings?
Well, first off, I'm really excited that Prince Albert seems to be a recurring feature of our family's life. I love him. He's my favorite bear. He's a sweet boy, and I can't wait for him to get into hijinks. I just hope that Jessica is mature and does take care of him some, and that he doesn't get out and run away again. That having been said, again, I think loyal listeners will know I don't give a shit about Maria and Michael. I hope one of them ends up dead, I guess.
Wow.
Not because I wish them ill. Like I said, is wishing them ill, but just let's have some stakes. I mean, if you're going to rip off Romeo and Juliet, somebody's got to be dead. Maybe everybody.
And then what's after that one? Oh my God, I need you to know that there's a book called Two Boy Weekend.
I've seen that film.
After Forbidden Love is out of control.
And then Spring Fever. And then 5 more until our first super thriller. We're doing it.
No, and then 6 regular editions, and then the super thriller.
Can't wait.
Well, let me tell you something. Number 40?
Mm-hmm.
Number 40 is big, that's all I have to say.
I can't wait.
It's one of the biggest in the series.
God, I hope that Prince Albert doesn't die. Oh, no, now I have to spend all my time freaked out about Prince Albert's impending death.
I'm saying number 40 is huge. Readers out there will know number 40 is...
Can you tell me what it's called or no?
On the Edge. On the Edge. I mean, it's historic.
It's terrifying. Okay, well, if any listener out there has a friend who's in a rough place, maybe he needs to start over in a supporting, loving embrace.
Maybe needs a new role model or role models to tell them what their opinions should be.
Must be, yeah.
And tastes.
Absolutely.
Preferences.
Well, why don't you just hit that share button, send that on to a friend, several friends, an enemy, a dog. Play it for you, the Prince Albert in your life. And while you've got it open, why not, rate, subscribe, 5 stars, maybe a brief review. That's what I want from you.
Wonderful.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.